Okay, this video is going to be a discussion on scale and sizes of figures for the Generations line. Now, with the popularity of the War for Cybertron trilogy figures, from Siege to Earthrise, and quite possibly an upcoming third installment of the War for Cybertron trilogy for 2021, there's been a confusion on the scale and sizes of figure and which is what and how big a figure should be. If you remember in the original trilogy, with the Prime Wars trilogy, with Combiner Wars, Titan's Return, and Power of the Primes, it was very clear that figures had a specific size, and if you mentioned a specific class, there was a certain expectation of how big a figure should be. They had the Titan class, which is mostly the combiners. The Titan class was the biggest set for the original Prime Wars trilogy. Then they had Leader class, Voyager class, Deluxe class, Legends class, and Prime Master class, and it was very clear, very distinct, and most of the figures were in the same size as what was dictated by the scale, whether it was a Leader class, Voyager class, or Deluxe class. Now, on to the War for Cybertron trilogy. There have been differences in sizes for each particular class, like the Leader class, Voyager class, and Deluxe class. And it's a little bit confusing nowadays to think about that you could have a smaller figure in the same class size as another figure. And I think that's partly due to what Hasbro is trying to do with their Transformers line. Much like what they're trying to do with the Studio Series line, that they're probably, in my opinion, putting everything in perfect scale with each other. Not perfect, but 95% perfect scale, an accurate scale with each other. And the reason for this is, like most completists, it's become very difficult to buy sets of figures that do not scale with each other and have their own scale. Like if you buy a Leader class figure, it's great, but it won't scale with the other Deluxe class figures or Voyager class figures back in the day. And nowadays, whether it's a Deluxe class figure or it's a Voyager class figure, each of the figures will almost nearly be in perfect scale with each other, and this is where the differences in sizes happen. And some of you guys have been telling me that the Deluxe class, Voyager class, Leader class sizes have become like a price point demarcation. Like it's Deluxe price or Voyager price and Leader price. I don't know. I'm not too sure about that. Maybe, but I think it's more got to do with scale. So if it fits in the size of maybe say a Deluxe or a Voyager, then they would put the figure there. If it had too much accessories, then they'd put it as a Leader class. And I think that's what's going on. So for the latest War for Cybertron trilogy, we have the following sizes. We have the Titan class, and this one was from Power of the Primes. You can see there's a stark difference in the box now, and it's no longer a Titan class because we're done with the combiners. We're almost done with the combiners. Titan class figures are normally the bigger ones, like Metroplex, Trypticon, Scorponok, and now Omega Supreme. And after that, we have the Commander class. The Commander class is, I think, what should have been the original Leader class size figures, but a little bit bigger. Not entirely Titan class, but a big enough figure that supersedes a Leader class, and it's probably still be in scale. So it's neither a Titan nor a Leader, so they created a new scale called the Commander class or new class. So that's that. And the more common ones for the War for Cybertron trilogy lines, we have the Leader class, Voyager class, the Deluxe class, the Micromaster class, and the weaponizer class figures. Yeah, I don't have a packaging for this one. It's a lot smaller. It's a little bit smaller than this one. But suffice to say, those are the major categories. Now, there's very little confusion with the Titan class because it's huge, as well as the Commander class. It's fine. The confusion happens in these three classes. For this one, no confusion. It's a Micromaster, and for this one as a weaponizer. So there's very little confusion with that. But we'll discuss them all, needless to say, in this general scale comparison. So let's start with the smallest scaled Transformers for the War for Cybertron trilogy, which are the the Prime Masters from the previous trilogy, which has been carried on into the Siege line, and some figures. The Micro Masters, the Battle Masters, and the Battle Masters. Now, essentially, this group is the one that's sort of replacing the original Legends class figures or Legion class figures, which are much smaller than this one. And instead of just having one scaled a class size of figures that, you know, probably are not going to be that small. You want to see an Optimus Prime that's that small. I mean, you'd have to get other figures that are much smaller to have him in scale with anybody. They decided to just put all the small characters like Headmasters or the minions of Soundwave and Target Masters and the Micro Masters, updated versions of their G1 counterpart, which have the same name, Micro Masters, into these three separate categories, thereby eliminating the old Legion class or Legends class set or class size of figures. And I think this is ingenious because the small figures, they recreated the smaller figures in the exact small scale. Target Masters were really small, and the minions of Soundwave and hopefully Blaster were really this small in comparison in scale with the other regular figures. Next up is the Deluxe class. This is probably the most confusing class out there. So in the Prime Wars trilogy, this is a basic Deluxe class. I mean, it's about 6 inches tall or 5.5 inches tall, and basically you'd get practically the same sized figure whether you get Optimus Prime or Wheeljack or Jazz or Scourge or any of that. But collectors were still complaining that they weren't in scale, so there was a desire to produce a smaller scaled Optimus Prime, bigger and the biggest scale, but collectors weren't really into that. They wanted one Optimus Prime that fit their entire collection, and it became you know, restrictive, very cost restrictive, to get every single Optimus Prime in different scales that really don't scale with each other. So they decided we'll put the Deluxe class as the smaller sized figures, which aren't really too small like the Micro Masters and all that. So this is now what you would get as a common Deluxe class figure. This is the regular size Deluxe class figure, and as you can see, it's a little bit shorter than the original. So you get Hound. But then in this same scale, they also added a larger Deluxe class sized figure, because in the cartoon, again, Hasbro was trying to go for scale accuracy. Some characters were slightly bigger than the regular ones. Suffice to say that the ground troops, the infantry, the regular grunts were Deluxe class sized figures, but some like Ironhide or Ratchet kind of stood out a little bit taller than the other guys, so they put out a bigger sized Deluxe class figure. And then finally, they put out an even smaller sized Deluxe class figure, which is really the mini-bots. The mini-bots looked not too small. They're not as small as the Micro Masters or the Minions or the Headmasters, but they were there. They were like in the same league as the Grunts, as the regular troops, but in a much smaller scale. So they were neither here nor there for the Legends class or the Micro Masters. So they had to create a different scale that's right into the Deluxe class scale. And to compensate for the cost, and maybe to justify selling it at the same price as these two, they added bigger weapons, some extra weapons, and all that. But what this thing does is it effectively eliminates certain classes like the Legends class. The Legends class now is out of scale, and I suspect they're going to do different versions of the Legends class Autobots in the small Deluxe class scale of figures. Also being eliminated is the standardized Deluxe class figure, which is this one. It's sort of in between the big Deluxe class figure and the regular size Deluxe class figure. So with 3 new sort of subclasses for the Deluxe class, you get rid of the standard and the Legends class set of figures. So now let's talk Voyager class. Now this is a standard Voyager class figure during the Prime Wars, which is Grimlock. It's very bulky, very big. And what Hasbro decided to do is to come again with 3 subclasses for the Voyager class figure, just like what they did with the Deluxe class. And you'll have something like this. This is the regular or the standard or middle medium-sized Voyager class figure for the new War for Cybertron. As you can see, it's sort of the same as the Voyager class from original Trilogy, but a lot less plastic, less kibble here and there, probably costs less than this one. Then they decided to put, just like the Deluxe, a smaller sized Voyager class figure, because in the bigger characters there's also one that's actually stands out taller than the others, like Optimus Prime. Soundwave was generally much smaller, but he wasn't as small as, say, a Deluxe class figure like Ratchet or Hound. So they put him in a much smaller size, but still in the Voyager class. And then you have the much bigger Voyager class, or the large-sized Voyager class figure, because like in the cartoon, Megatron was slightly taller than Optimus Prime. And if you had made them the same size, they would not be in scale. But looking at these three figures, they are different sizes, but the amount of plastic and probably the cost will definitely fall into the Voyager class scale of figures. And finally, we have the leader class size of figures. This is Shockwave. He's actually about the same size as a Voyager class Optimus Prime. Now, Hasbro created the leader class not as a big figure, but rather a figure with extra bits of accessories to justify that price point. And if you look at this one, this extra bit could actually sort of make him a bigger robot, and that's what Hasbro's trying to do with the leader class. If a Voyager class figure requires extra accessories, and it would not be complete without it, just like what we have with Astro Train, and even the new leader class EARTHRISE Optimus Prime. Basically, these figures are Voyager class sized figures, but with the extra bit of accessories, they've been sold as leader class figures. And this still eliminates the out of scale dilemma that you have with leader class figures. You want a big figure for the leader class, you got to make a big figure. That's not necessarily the case now, because Hasbro's decided we'll keep the figure in scale, but it's a leader class because of the extra accessories. And what this does is you no longer have oversized figures that are out of scale with the rest of the other figures. In the original Trilogy, we had something like this as a leader class figure. It was severely out of proportion, as you can see right here. Optimus Prime was never that big. He looked like a huge statue or a giant mech or robot. You no longer have that problem. Optimus Prime is going to be in scale, but you can still have him in leader class because of the extra accessories. And the problem with that is, does it justify the price hike to get another Voyager class figure with accessories? You'd have to pay extra money, like a big jump from the Voyager class price point. Whereas with the original trilogies, you'd have something like this, which was really a hefty toy, a big one that justified the leader class price point. But like I said, Hasbro was really dealing with addressing that scale issue, and yet maintaining those three different class sizes. So there you go, folks. I hope you've enjoyed this little discussion that we've had regarding the scale of these latest War for Cybertron trilogy figures, Siege and EARTHRISE figures. And I hope it's eliminated a little bit of the confusion that's been going on, whether a figure is a deluxe class, or too small to be a deluxe, too big to be a Voyager, or too little to be a leader class figure. It's again, as I mentioned, Hasbro's attempt to provide us with very accurate, nostalgic, G1 updated figures and characters that actually scale with each other. Let me know in the comment section what you think of this new strategy by Hasbro. Is it not cost effective? Is it very price restrictive? Is it great for collectors? I mean, if scale is your thing and you're a completist, is it going to work out for you? I'm okay with it in general. It's just that with the prices of toys going on right now, sometimes you have to be very prudent when making toy purchases, and you got to be very selective of what you get. And as I always mention in my other videos, always keep it 100%. If you don't like the figure 100%, let it go, pass on it, sell it. If you like it 100%, buy it immediately. So hit that notification bell so you never miss out on any of my latest video reviews. This has been a nice little discussion of the new scale and size of figures from the new War for Cybertron Trilogy, Siege, and EARTHRISE Transformers Generations figures. Thanks for watching.